privilege to be able to go around the world and share the gospel and interact with other Christians as we do that. And we thank you so much for this particular group that shared this experience. Help us now just to be able to describe with clarity what it is that we learned and experienced as we were in Germany and the Czech Republic. Thank you so much for this time and for this experience. Amen. So, in going to Germany with this fabulous group of students and young people and others, we really had a great time. And this would be our 5th journey to Europe with some type of group from Grace University involving music. And so this experience was really at the top for me. I mean, I can really say that this group was amazing in every way. So the ones that are here, would you stand and turn around and kind of wave?
That should be set then, towards the microphone.
Of course, there's many others that are
exit out of it and like reopen it.
And do other things, but I really want to thank this group, and especially the ones that are here, for being.
What the heck?
It was really amazing. So I just want to kind of give you a quick little
Microphone.
tour of our tour.
Yeah, it's the microphone.
So there's the group. There were 23 of us. And this particular shot was taken outside of St. Vitus Cathedral.
Yeah, that should be
in
right.
Prague. And so that was our first stop along the way. We flew from Chicago to Munich and then to Prague. And then right out of the bus, we began to do some things that really helped us to understand where we were and what we were going to experience. So in Prague, we gave a concert at St. Martin in the Wall, and you can see us dressed up in our concert dress outside the church that was built in the 1100s. So it's kind of this beautiful ancient place. You can see a shot of us giving a concert there. And before, the group just kind of sang out on the street, and it was kind of fun to see people interact with them as right before the concert. We also were privileged to have a high school group from the Prague Christian High School come and hear our concert, and so interacting with those high school students was really terrific after we finished. And then after a few days in Prague, we went to Dresden, which is in eastern Germany, and Dresden gave us an opportunity to meet with a wonderful church. This church, man, they set up a beautiful experience for us with wonderful food, and the church was so packed there were people standing. And then afterwards they gave us a beautiful meal, and then as we were leaving, they all stood around with candles on the side of the road as we drove our bus out, and they were all holding their candles saying goodbye to us. So that memory will always be beautiful in my mind. It was really wonderful. And we that night we actually spent in a hostel with which a hostel is kind of a place where youth would stay, and the place was packed with teenagers. It was interesting. And then we went to Leipzig. Leipzig is kind of the first stop on our Reformation part of the tour. You know, this is the 500th anniversary of the Lutheran Reformation. Martin Luther nailed the 95 Theses on the castle church door in 1517, October 31, right? So it's coming up. We'll have much to say about the Reformation here in the next month or so. But anyway, this was the kind of the first spot on our trip where the Reformation was part of our thinking and doing. So we gave several performances. You can see us standing outside of St. Thomas Church. That's the picture with Johann Sebastian Bach. And so we sang a concert in the church where Johann Sebastian Bach was the leader of the music for 24 years, and we sang right on top of his grave. It was, yeah, it was cool. So, and then we also gave a concert at a wonderful, for a wonderful congregation, the Freie Evangelische Gemeinde, or the Evangelical Free Church congregation there, and their pastor, Thomas R. Helger, and you can see us on the down at the bottom giving a photo of that concert. Beautiful church, and of course, every time we'd give a concert, we'd finish, and then they would clap, 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 and then we'd have to do another song, and then clap, and so it was, you know, those kind of experiences are truly gratifying. But we're just praising the Lord for these experiences. Then we went really on a day that, or a couple days, where we focused entirely on the Reformation, where we visited Erfurt, Wittenberg, Magdeburg, and also Eisenach. And it was in those places that we saw and heard the story of Martin Luther, and saw where he lived, where he worked, and the churches where he served, and so forth. So these experiences, I think, taught us a great deal about the story of the Reformation. And then the picture at the bottom right was the church in Magdeburg, which ironically enough is a Catholic church. And at this concert, people arrived an hour early. And we were looking at our watches and thinking, did we miss the time of the concert here? But by the time the concert was to start, there were people standing everywhere, and there was hardly any room to even get into this church. So a beautiful, beautiful concert, amazing experience with encores, and we even had to go outside, and as the people were leaving, we would sing as they left the concert. And then afterwards, they had a big party for us, and in this kind of fairy tale setting. Ask them about that. It was amazing. So quickly moving on, then we went to Berlin, and we spent the longest time in Berlin, and we gave a number of concerts there, all kind of described here in these photos. One was outdoors in a park at an outdoor jazz festival, Jazz im Park. That's German for jazz in the park. Sorry. And then the host church there, the Freie Evangelische Gemeinde in Pankow, is led by Timo Heimlich, good friend. He's planned concerts now for us for the last 15 years. It's really been a great experience. And then our final concert of the entire trip, we're standing outside St. Luke's Church in Berlin, and this is just before our concert there. And can see. Okay, so we can have, we had lots of fun with our hosts and sightseeing all the important places in Berlin, learning about the history of Germany and the Nazis and many, many interesting things like that. But what we really need to hear from are the students that experienced this trip. And so I've asked them to come and tell stories about who they met, what they experienced, and what they learned, and the types of answers to prayer that we saw all the time that we were there. So I'm going to come down here and hand the mic to Nick.
Yeah, so this trip was just incredible to go to Germany to sing for all these people, for people who hadn't been in church and who had been in church, and it was just incredible. And one of my favorite parts was the host homes that we got to go in. So in Leipzig, we sang in their church, and then we came back and did an encore. Then we went backstage, and then we came back again and did another encore. And it was just crazy, just how much they loved hearing us sing. And me and Arian got to go with a guy named George. He just lived by himself in a really small flat. Didn't really have much to offer, but he was willing, and we were ready to just bunk down anywhere. So it was just awesome experience to get to know him. He's written a book. He is an avid photographer. He's incredibly musically gifted, and he fixes bikes, and he has like 20 bikes down in his basement of this flat building that he's living in. He wants to fix them up and put them all around Berlin, and just have people use them, and then write a journal about where they went with the bikes. And it's just an incredible ministry that he's setting up there. But one of the best parts was the night that we got into Leipzig. He asked us, and it was like 8 or 9 o'clock at night at this point. It was dark out, and we couldn't see anything. He's like, "You guys want to go on a bike ride?" And we were like, "Sure." So he pulled out a couple of his bikes, and we went on a 2-3 mile bike ride to this lake, beautiful sand beach and perfect still lake. And it was kind of just away from the city, so we just got to really experience the countryside of Germany, and we got to swim in the lake. It was super cool, and it was all 10 o'clock at night, and we had a beer. It was non-alcoholic. And then we rode back, and we just had a great time talking with him, sharing our favorite verses. He was a fairly new Christian. He was just asking us all these kinds of questions. It was really cool just to get to know him. So now I'm just going to let
That's my roommate. Anyway, for the trip. But, so I had an interesting time in Germany too, with one of the host families. I was part of the group that stayed extra, and it was really interesting with the host family that I stayed with, because like right from the start, before they even knew me, they were super excited about me coming, and she had 2 kids, and one of them was like overexcited and just really wanted to come see me, see an American, and play with me, and it was pretty crazy, but that was really great. And from the time I got there, I realized that they spoke a lot less English than a lot of the families that I've stayed with, but we still had a great time. And like, she would get out her phone and Google Translate whatever she wanted to say to me at breakfast, and it was just really amazing. And one morning while we were eating, she noticed that I would wait until they sat down to start eating, and like, she was like, "Oh, do you pray in the morning?" And I was like, yeah, I do pray in the morning." And then she was like, "Oh, well, can you pray for us?" And I was like, "For sure, I'll pray for you." And then we prayed at breakfast, and pretty soon it got to the point where like the kids would like, one time I had already prayed with Siglendo when we sat down, and then the kids came and asked that I would pray again. And it was just really amazing how that turned about. And the mother of the kids said that one of them started believing in God once I got there. So I don't know what that was about, but it was just a really cool experience. But anyway, I'll hand it over to Shelby. Or Rachel.
Love you too, Kyle. So I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the concert experiences we had. We did a lot of different concerts for a lot of different audiences, and some of our audience members actually followed us and came to more than one concert, which was really neat. But one person who was with us throughout the duration of the trip was our guide, Michaela. She's from Bulgaria, and she is absolutely amazing. She somehow kept us all together and alive and in the right place at the right time. She was absolutely fabulous. But we found out before the trip from our tour group, Varna International, who were also fabulous, that they were really excited that we were going to be traveling with Michaela, because Michaela did not have a personal relationship with Jesus, and that she would have the opportunity to see Christians living their lives day in and day out and see how we handled different things. And so from the beginning, we were like, okay, Lord, like, grant us grace, because traveling in a different country, that can present a lot of stresses and challenges where when we're pressed, are we going to act like Jesus, or are we going to act like, oh, I'm tired, I'm hungry, I'm annoyed with the people around me? And so that was something we were thinking about and praying about even before we went on the trip. So our first concert, Michaela's like, yeah, so excited. She was like there in the front row. And at some point afterwards, she said, you know, I had planned to go to your first concert and then every concert after that to just go do something else, pull out my phone. And she said, but I can't because your music, it just captures me and I can't look away. And some of these songs make me cry. And the songs that were making her cry were the songs that were the most direct representations of the gospel. And so, though while we were there, we don't know that anything happened. There were seeds that were planted. And every time she was there in the front row, tears streaming down her face, intently listening to us share about Jesus. And so if you are wanting to pray for other countries or specific people in other countries, pray for Michaela and her boyfriend and their 2 kids, because she's now heard the gospel and that seed has been planted, and we're trusting that God's going to continue to work in her life and the life of her family. So now I'm going to hand it off to Danae.
So I'm just going to talk a little bit about the host families that we had. My roommate was Rebecca, and in Leipzig we had such a great time. The girl that hosted us was a Christian, and she every morning had breakfast prepared for us, and she talked about the ministries that she was doing. So we were really excited for our time that was going to happen in Berlin, because we were going to stay there for 3 nights. So we were excited to meet our host family. And at the church, we met him, and we heard he has a wife and a daughter. And so when I met him first, I asked, oh, so how long have you been married? And he said, oh, I'm not married. She's just my girlfriend. And so that was kind of a shock at first. And then, you know, he didn't have as much prepared for us. He took us to the store he's just like, hey, just buy this, buy that, whatever you want. And so it was kind of like, well, this is very different. And some of his language was a little bit it kind of took, I don't know, it was just kind of like a little bit of a shock in comparison to what we had in Leipzig. And so for a while I was like, God, why do you have us here? And then it became clear to me that Rebecca and I were supposed to be a light for this family, and in the car we had a great conversation about what we believe. He asked me, are you a Christian? And what does that mean? And we explained to him our beliefs, and he was very interested. And then I also stayed behind for the English camp, so I got to stay in Berlin for a little longer, and I was wondering, who's my host family going to be? And it turns out that it was the same host family that had already been hosting me. And I was like, God, why are you putting me here? This is kind of an uncomfortable situation because they have such a small flat, and I'm sleeping in their bed, and they'd have to put an air mattress up for me. But then, you know, God used that to just change my heart towards them and to make me really fall in love with that family and grow a close relationship with them. When they picked me up from the airport once because I traveled to Switzerland for a little bit and came back. And he waited 2 hours for me to get my luggage because they had lost it. And that just shows how close we had become over this course of a week and a half. And so I just want to keep praying for them, and I hope you guys can also put that family in your thoughts as well.
Yeah, so the others said, there was a lot of answered prayers. People really were touched by the music and the ministry we did, and there was a really good spirit in the group. But I had a major thing happen. It was a struggle for me even to go to Germany. I had a hard time raising the funds, and I had a hard time having the right attitude about going. Knowing if it was something I was supposed to do. And so we get over there, and my mom had joined us, which was really cool because she was over there 24 years ago. And so we got over there. I was trying to relax because I had prayed specifically for me to have peace about being there and to try to relax. And at our first concert, I opened up my cello because I brought that along to play along with some of the songs. And I started to tune it, and I heard a crack. The back of my cello had come off, and I just looked at it and started to bawl because I felt like part of me had broken. We got back to our hotel that night, and I was just thinking, God, why would you bring me here to have this happen? I don't understand. This was the big reason why I came, was to play for the group. And I was just at a loss, and I didn't know what to do. So I spent like 4 hours trying to contact different people here in the States, my musician friends, to figure out what I could do, if it was salvageable. Well, the next day we got to Dresden, and our guide was a man who had played in the symphony. He was an upright bass player for many, many years. And when he found out about my cello, he got me one I could borrow for that night. And then he took me and my mom to see if we could get the cello fixed by a master violin maker there in Dresden. And I did not expect good news at all. I was still having a really bad attitude. I was happy that there might be a chance, but I wasn't going to put much stock in it. So we got to the shop, and the guy's like, yeah, I can fix this. And our guide's like, how much? And we all were in shock because he said 49 euros, which is about 50 bucks, and completely unheard of for an instrument repair. This was also the church that stood outside with the candles and was just, it was my favorite church. That night at the concert, I was a lot more cheerful. I was disappointed I would have to spend money, but I was glad at least my cello was fixed. It was going to be fixed. And afterwards, during the dinner part, we found out that most of the people who had come to the concert were complete strangers. The pastor had never seen them before, and they'd taken a love offering. And they were handing out these goodie bags with bookmarks and different things for us. And the one lady is like, which one of you is Angel? It's like, well, I am. She comes over and gives me an envelope with the same amount of money that I spent to fix the cello. And I started crying again. And I'm not a crier. I don't cry. I'm very stoic. But I realized that God had provided that. And he wanted me to quit worrying so much about what I could do and what he was doing. And I was able to have a better attitude throughout the rest of the trip and just be able to trust him in what he was doing with the group and with this coming semester. So it was a great experience, and if you're interested, I would definitely look into it.
Thank you. So we had so many amazing experiences singing in churches and just all around these countries. But one of my favorite parts was just singing in the streets and singing in random places where we weren't supposed to be able to sing. Technically, singing in the streets in Germany is illegal. So we actually, during one of our times when we wanted to sing in the streets, we ended up turning around and facing a wall and singing to the wall, because that's legal. So that was really fun. And every time we sang in the streets, we sang in Leipzig, we sang in Eisenach, we sang in Berlin, just crowds would come around us and people would start questioning, why are you here? Who are you? What are you singing about? And it opened up so many amazing conversations. And every time I would just smile like so big, the fact that we were just doing this just because we love Jesus, and that people were responding to it in a place that's secular and that doesn't really think that the church is important. People were coming into the churches because we were in the streets caring about them, and we were there for them. And then when we were in Erfurt, our guide was he loved to sing, and he stopped us by this church, and he's like, Bach played in this church, and you guys can go sing in there. And we're like, we're not allowed to just go in and sing in random churches. But he's like, just do it. And so we went in and we started singing a cappella, and he almost started crying, and he said, you guys are something special. And that was amazing to hear from a performer who had sung in amazing choirs all over the world, and that he said that we were something special. And then I don't really know what else I was gonna say, but it was it was amazing to see how God was working even when we weren't supposed to be singing places. And the one last thing before we show the video is we went to the church where Martin Luther had nailed the 95 Theses on the door in the Castle Church. You're not supposed to be able to sing in there either. We walked in there, and Dr. Z asked the lady who was in charge. He said, "Can we just sing a song? You know, it's in German. You can understand it." And so we sang "A Mighty Fortress Is Our God" a cappella, and it just echoed through the cathedral. And that was probably one of the most meaningful things for me, was singing in a church that we had learned about in Dr. Ekman's class, and we were there singing illegally, and but for Jesus. And so this trip was just amazing in so many ways. And so here's the video made by Tim Call.